Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you. Got a big show lined up for you today. Start off over in Athens with Jordan Hill, one of the best 24/7 sports covers Georgia. Got a big matchup, renewal of the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Georgia 14-point favorite. Probably not enough for most people. Why is it only 14? If Auburn can't get better quarterback play, it is going to be really, really tough. Something tells me somebody's going to step up. You got to in a game like this. Second segment, Gary Harris checks in from Tuscaloosa, Tide 100.9, WVUA TV 23. Does a great show, folks, Tuesday nights with Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. It's called Tider Insider TV. Hour number 2, Jacques Doucet, WAFB, Channel 9, Baton Rouge, two-time Louisiana Sportscaster of the Year, will be on with us, previewing LSU Ole Miss down in Oxford at the Vault this Saturday. Also, Coach Matt Dean checks in. He's back from Eugene, Oregon, where his son Tyler is on the staff with Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks, and they quacked the hell out of Colorado last week, 42-6. I think that was a merciful score. Deion's doing a lot of good things, but at the same time, he's got a Colorado team with all these new guys. He's got to build a culture. They're going to have to fight. You got Southern Cal coming into Boulder this weekend. And John Hartwell, ULM AD, checks in with us as well. So we got a lot to cover. A couple of housekeeping notes. This hour brought to you by RumbleBoxingGym.com, 1835 Union Avenue, Midtown Memphis. Go in there, punch it out every day of the week, open. Weekdays, 5:15 in the morning. Classes with 48 people, elite instructors. Boxing is incredible. You engage both sides of your brain, foot movement, everything. The class is 45 minutes long, the length of a prize fight, and you're going to get in the best shape. They have all the equipment, all the gear, everything you need there. Midtown Memphis, the first of 3 locations that Ann Camp Lee is going to open in the Memphis market. And Corona Transport Corporation. They are now rolling. I'm going to give you all the information on that throughout the show. They transport cotton anywhere you need it to be delivered, okay? So I'm going to bring in Jordan Hill with us right now. 24/7 Sports in Athens. And Jordan, man, it's weird. I know they moved it because I think Auburn and Georgia, well, at least Auburn was going, wow, we got Georgia at the end of the year, then a week of an easy opponent, and then Alabama. But the minute they did it, the old saying, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. I don't like it. And I'm never going to be comfortable. I like a mid-November, cloudy, 55 degrees, down there at Jordan-Hare or at Sanford Stadium. I want it back like it used to be. I want the 3-6 also so we don't lose that rivalry. But right now, Georgia's the king of the college football world. And until somebody beats them, they're king of the college football world.
Definitely. And yeah, I'm with you, Rob. It doesn't feel right. Someone pointed out I need to back and the last time this game was played in September, because it'll be the last day of September on Saturday. I don't know how far back you have to go, but yeah, I mean, Georgia's still number one. They've got stuff they need to clean up, and we were talking about this with some of our friends on the Auburn beat. We're still learning a lot about this Georgia team. I mean, they've only really played one Power 5 opponent, having played South Carolina, and it was a game that was not the prettiest at times for Georgia. So there's going to be a lot to learn about Georgia in this game on Saturday. Carson Beck's first road start. How does he handle that? It makes for a fun one, but I'm with you. I do wish this game was back in November, though. I do really understand why Auburn was like, if we could spread out Georgia and Alabama, that would probably be in our best interest.
Yeah, and what they do is they just replace it with LSU or Texas A&M. I mean, let's be honest, which we always are. Full disclosure, there's nowhere to hide in the SEC. You can't. And also, as an Auburn man, I've always embraced those tough challenges of having probably the toughest schedule in the league, having to play Georgia and Alabama. And right now, they're the top 2 programs in college football. I mean, Ohio State likes to think they are, but they're not. And they've got a coach that wants to go tangle with a geriatric. One of my favorites, Lou Holtz. Come on. Ryan Day quit this Ohio against the world. I think he's got a career as a professional wrestler, don't you?
I mean, he looks like a Disney villain with that beard. I thought he was
Yeah.
in Beauty of the and the Beast and something like that. But no, yeah, it's I enjoy this week because of the perspective I have from having covered Auburn, and I want to give a shout out to Justin Lee over there at the Black Auburn News. He
Yeah.
made a point really in the last few years that Auburn is stuck between a rock and a hard place with Alabama having been the king of college football and Georgia rising up and now having a claim to that. And Auburn's stuck right there in the middle with their two biggest rivals. It makes things really difficult. And, it didn't help you get behind during the Brian Harsin era, the way they recruited, or maybe I should say the way they did not recruit. But I do think Hugh Freeze has a chance to get Auburn back to where they are competitive, where they can hang with and try to tangle with the Alabamas and the Georgias. And, we talk about when it comes to moving that game, it's not very fun when the teams are like this. But if you're an Auburn fan and you win the Deep South Soulless rivalry, then you turn around a couple of weeks later and win the Iron Bowl, that makes for a pretty fun November, Rob.
It does. And I've got Auburn. I was talking to an Alabama friend of mine last night for a long time, and we've known each other since we were young kids. And the respect that I have for Georgia and Alabama is because there would be no rivalry if those programs weren't so good. It wouldn't mean so much, to beat them. Like, you can't shoot spikes if you're a deer hunter. You know what I'm talking about. You can't shoot a spike. You're not supposed to, at least. But there's a reason for that. I mean, that's like beating a D2 team when you're Georgia or Auburn. You want to go get the 12-point or the 16-point, which usually you're told by the landowner, don't kill that big one because he's the seed for all the rest of my herd. But Georgia, again, one of the stupidest questions I've seen asked on Twitter was, last year, is Georgia considered a blue blood program in college football? Well, I didn't realize that living brain donors were on X in such numbers. But Georgia's program under Kirby, people say he took the blueprint from Alabama, but that's Kirby Smart and his father, Sonny Smart, I think, from Bainbridge, Georgia, or Tifton. Is it Bainbridge? Yeah. People don't give him enough credit for his own family.
Yeah, I mean, he's been around football all his life, and it was funny. I think it was a couple weeks ago now. Somebody asked Kirby about, did you study coaches coming up, like when you decided you wanted to be a coach?
Yeah.
And he said, no, I just worked with a lot of really good ones. And, worked with Nick Saban, was on the staff of Mark Richt. People forget he was a GA at Florida State under Bobby Bowden. So, I mean, he has been
Kirby
around.
was?
He was.
Wait,
Kirby was, yeah.
I did not know that.
So, I mean, he's been around some really, really good coaches. And, I mean, I think the good coaches take a little bit from everywhere they go. And I think Kirby's done that. And two, I mean, look at the coaching tree he's already got. We see what Dan Lanning's doing at Oregon. I think Sam Pittman's done a very good job at Arkansas. Some of the other guys, Shane Beamer at South Carolina, he's had guys who have gone off and had success running their own programs. I think that just shows you some of the things that he has learned and the ways he goes about his business. People take note, and it's been successful elsewhere so far.
Well, you take a little bit of everywhere that you are if you're a smart coach, and you start out as a GA. Kirby had 19 interceptions at Georgia.
I don't remember. I'm not the stat whiz. But he had a lot more than, if you look at him now, that you would think he had as a safety.
Man, can you imagine? I mean, Buddy McClinton, 1969, still holds the record at Auburn, 19 in a career. And Auburn intercepted 9 in one game against Florida in 1969 when John Reeves was the quarterback after Steve Spurrier. But look at teams now. How many interceptions did Georgia have last year? I'm just curious because when you've got Glenn Schumann, who spent time with Nick Saban, Will Muschamp, of course, and Kirby Smart. When you get those 6 eyeballs looking at tape on defense, how can you screw it up? You can't.
Yeah, they didn't have a ton of turnovers. I'm trying to think. As far as interceptions as a team, they probably had around 9 or 10. And it's interesting for the most part, and they've created more turnovers, I think, to start this year than they did compared to a year ago. They typically don't lead the nation in turnovers, but what they do is they get 3 and outs and they get stops. They don't give offenses the chance to turn the ball over. But you've seen a little bit more of that, and I think that's going to be a big piece of what we see Saturday, just the turnover margin, because you mentioned, Rob, what that line is. The only way I think Auburn stays in this game is if they create turnovers, which they've done a very good job of. I think so far Auburn's created like 9 turnovers, 9 takeaways to this
Yeah.
point in the season. I really like Auburn's defense. It's the other side of the ball that I got a whole lot of questions about.
It's like watching. Golly, I'm trying to think. I like to say like watching elephants sprint. They're not fast. It's awful. And 50, you had more yards in penalties last weekend for Auburn, 64, than they had passing, 56 against the Aggies. And even when Connor Wegman went out at halftime with that high ankle sprain, I think they brought in the backup, Max Johnson, whose dad, Brad, played 17 years in the NFL. But looking at Georgia, are you concerned about anything in particular on their offense? Because their defense is just a smoke show every week. But offensively, Brock Bowers, we're not hearing his name called as much, but those first 2 years, are 5 guys' careers at most schools.
I think the
combined.
biggest thing for and I think for me the biggest thing is the run game, and we were talking about this on the Auburn Observer's Justin Ferguson. We did a podcast together, and he was asking about the run
Yeah.
game. And the thing is, they don't have a lot of running backs. They are not really healthy. They did not have Kendall Milton or Roderick Robinson for last week's game against UAB. I think Kendall will be back. He's been dealing with an MCL. I don't think Roderick will play on Saturday. So you're sort of looking at Dejan Edwards, who number one back, but he was out for the first few games with an injury. Andrew Paul, who's a redshirt freshman, who it feels like is still sort of getting his legs under him after tearing his ACL a year ago. Should have Kendall Milton back, which will help. Cash Jones, who's a walk-on from Texas, that has done pretty good, but again, he's a walk-on. Savon Clark, another walk-on. They've got to get bodies at running back. I think they can run the ball pretty well. And Dacian's first game back, he went over 100 yards in the win against South Carolina and was really, really big, especially in that fourth quarter. But to me, that is where I have the most concern for this offense. I think Carson has done a very good job at quarterback, but they have to stay balanced. And right now, they just need bodies who are even capable of being out there to take those carries.
Running backs, I've been hearing more and more discussions, and we talk about it a lot. There's this mentality that seeped down to where a running back doesn't want to carry the ball, 12, 15 times a game, because you got to save your body for the NFL, because you might make it 3 or 4 years as a running back, and that's about it. I mean, look at Derrick Henry. We talked about it yesterday. His stuff's starting to slow down. And he's a big guy. He can take a lot. He's 6'4". He's a big one. Brandon Jacobs was another one out of Napoleonville, Louisiana. What is your take on that? Do you think the running back position we're changing, and also the offensive line? Everything's about 7-on-7 skill camps, and the big offensive linemen are sort of, in my opinion, being ignored, their development.
Well, I think with the running backs, we've seen in the last decade or so how big depth is and having different guys. And I think that that's gotten us away from having those 20, 25, 30 carry, a game backs. That's sort of when Mike Bobo was hired, some people are like, are we going back to that? And that's not been the case. But I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is that not only do teams stack depth at running back at this point, but they use it. They don't just hold off and say, well, this will be our number one back next year. We may give him 3 or 4 carries in this game. No, that they usually do a pretty good job of getting those guys all involved and trying to get them to run the ball. Offensive line, I'm not smart enough to really comment on what exactly has changed on that front, but I know when you look at Georgia just over the years, how much bigger the linemen are. Amarius Mims, who is banged up right now for Georgia, he won't play on Saturday.
He's so
But
big.
he's like 6'7" or 6'8" and athletic. I'm not talking about like a stone wall at 6'7", 6'8". I mean, a very athletic guy. It's incredible just how big these linemen are, but how agile they still are at that size. And it's why Georgia's had several of those guys go on to the NFL.
Yeah, I think Amarius Mims was Blakely, Georgia, Early County High School, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. And the funny thing about this rivalry with Auburn and Georgia is that the fans of both schools know everybody's players because they recruit every player. I mean, it's what it is. And lately, they've all been going to Georgia. And Auburn's trying to get back into that. But Georgia, the big red wall, offensive line. Mims, very likely first, second round pick, would you say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, he's the couple of years that Matt Luke was there, I think he's really good. But I want to talk about their offensive line coach and the development there, because the player development, again, it's like going to the grocery store. You leave them in the trunk for a week. It's going to be in the mid-90s every day for the foreseeable future up here in Memphis. I don't know if it's that hot in Athens, but it's not going to end well. Lack of player development is as bad or worse than, not recruiting. I think because if you bring star players in and you don't develop them, they can become clubhouse cancers real fast.
Definitely, like with offensive line and Stacy Searles, a guy Auburn fans know well. He has done a good job. There were a lot of questions when he was hired about how he would recruit, and he did a really good job with that first class, getting Monroe Freeling, Kelton Smith, Jamal Merriweather, Bo Hewley, a guy Auburn wanted really, really badly. And it's been interesting to hear guys like Tate Ratledge, who at this point, I believe Tate was initially recruited by Sam Pittman, and obviously Sam left. Matt Luke comes in, kind of seals the deal with Tate coming in, and then he asked Stacy Searles after that. And Tate really, really spoke highly of Stacy and said, you know what he's going to bring every single day, and he is going to be the same person every day. And that, he pushes those guys to be perfect. And none of those guys are, and none of them ever will be. But he's a guy that sets the standard high. I think that he has done a good job. I think it's taken some fans, some fans sort of had preconceived notions about how he would do. And part of that just based back on when he was at Georgia the first time. I believe that was 07 to 10. But Stacy's done a really good job. I think this offensive line started to come together. I was a little underwhelmed by some of those early games, but they were playing inferior opponents. They did rotate several different guys in there to try to get different guys reps, and that paid off in that South Carolina game. Amarius Mims gets hurt in the second quarter. They move Xavier Truss from left guard to right tackle. They bring in Dylan Fairchild to fill Xavier's original spot, and now that's the lineup they're running with. So it has helped them that they got those guys in game reps. I think that's invaluable. And it will be interesting to see how they play on Saturday if they give Carson Beck a lot of time on the road.
Carson Beck's first road game, everybody's all caught up in that. He played mop-up duty in his previous years behind Stetson Bennett, the 4th, 5th, and 6th. But he looks good. He's taller than Stetson. I mean, that's no surprise there. But he's got a hell of an arm. He whips the ball around. What is Georgia concerned about if they are, and just in your opinion, someone who covers Georgia? I would say a fan, but I want to give you credit for something. You're a professional journalist, and you know the rule. You can't get emotionally attached to the team you cover. I mean, the deal in the press box, if you cheer, you're out of here. Claude Felton, you're out. I mean, you won't be able to do it, but you get to work, by the way, with one of the legends, still the sports information director at Georgia. But if you are Georgia, what are you concerned about what Auburn does on defense? Offense, have pity. St. Jude, patron saint of hopeless causes, pray for us. That's what our teachers used to say at Christian Brothers High School before a test if we didn't look like we were ready. But defensively, Auburn's got some life in them.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing if you're Georgia is you worry about a slow start. And there's been a few of those so far this year. In that South Carolina game, it wasn't so much slow starts as it was just not finishing drives. Settling for field goals, making one, settling for field goals and missing a pretty short one, and then missing another one in the second half. if Georgia is able to start fast, not only you can build a lead or hang with Auburn if they're able to move the ball themselves, but you can kind of take that energy out of Jordan Hare. And everybody saw last week's game against Texas A&M. All the Auburn fans know what that looked like. If Georgia makes some plays early, and I've said this, I expect them to maybe take a shot on that first possession, second possession. Try to make a quick 7 points. You're going to feel that air kind of come out of Jordan Hare Stadium. You're going to hear, you can tell, you could see the fans going, oh, here we go again. So if Georgia were to start slow and not even necessarily turn the ball over or anything like that, but just not be able to score, I think that's not a good situation where we know how loud Jordan Hare is. Jordan Hare is the loudest stadium I've ever been in to cover a football game. It can be that if this is a tough game. And if you're Georgia, you want to do everything you can to take that out of the equation.
You look at that rivalry, Auburn, Georgia, February 20th, 1892. My dad was there at Piedmont Park in Atlanta. Auburn 10, Georgia nothing. Georgia's mascot was a goat with a black cape with a red G on it. And Auburn won that game. After the game, Vince Dooley said this, so it's true. He said after the game, the Georgia fans were so enraged that they barbecued the goat. So I could say I guess that was our first tailgate cookout in the Southeastern Conference, as only Vince Dooley from Murphy High School in Mobile could say it. But in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, Auburn won the series in every one of those decades. You get to 2000 to 2009 when Mark Richt came in, 4-6 in that decade, so they didn't. 2010, 2019, 3-8. Georgia really pulls away. Okay. And in this millennium, that means 20, 21, and 22 for those of you in Sacramento, 0-3. So in this millennium, since the year 2000, Y2K, we survived it. The biggest non-event since the last ice age. Georgia leads the series, or Auburn trails 7-16. Dogs have just pulled away. Auburn's done better in that period. They're like 11-11 versus Alabama. It's Georgia that Auburn struggles to compete with, and they've always depended on the state of Georgia for recruiting. What is it that's going on at Georgia? Clemson tries to come in there. Florida State comes in there. Tennessee. Kirby, he's not recruiting. He's choosing, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good problem to have when you have the home base of the state of Georgia that you can pull guys from. And one of my favorite things, my dad is a huge Georgia fan, and he'll always, especially this week, he'll text me and say, Auburn's got 26 guys, or I'm just making up a number. Auburn's got 30 guys from the state of Georgia. Why are we letting them? And I'm like, Dad, they can only sign, 25 to 30 guys. It always drives him crazy. But that Georgia is able to choose what they want, and they've done a good job of keeping the guys in state for the most part. You're not going to get everybody. Keeping a lot of the guys that they want in state there, but they've recruited nationally. I mean, you've talked about it a lot on this show. Brock Bowers out in California. Darnell Washington was from Nevada. Keely Ringo from Arizona. And they've continued to pull guys. They got a couple of teammates from out in Texas, a couple of Justin Williams, a linebacker, and Joseph Jonah Ajanya, a defensive lineman. That'll be in this upcoming class. So they're out in Texas. They've got guys all over the place. And that's a product of how Georgia has played, winning back-to-back national championships. That opens a lot of doors. But Kirby Smart's a Georgia guy. He's not going to, shy away from the home state. And he knows what kind of talent is in this state. And you see that even in their walk-ons. I mean, we were talking about some of the guys that have contributed in a big way. And Kirby's talked about a big part of that is because they can keep guys home and get guys to walk on at Georgia who were high school players in the state and were pretty good players at that.
Well, high school football in Georgia, you know Jason Caldwell, and you and Jason, that group of people that y'all all work together, you're just, it's amazing how good you are, but you're truth brokers. Somebody asks you a question, you're not going to fudge. Jason said this a couple of years ago. The state of Alabama, high school talent-wise, is where the state of Georgia was 10 years ago. So they're producing about 150 Division I players a year out of the state of Alabama with 5.1 million people. Georgia with a little over 11 million, 10 million of them in the metro Atlanta area, it seems like. But if you get in traffic, Georgia about 250. Number one state in America is Texas, around 400. California, about 385. Florida, 375. Georgia, fourth at 250. Ohio, fifth, around 160. Alabama, sixth, around 150. It's pretty amazing how good the high school football is down here. How do you compare the high school talent South Georgia versus Metro Atlanta, which now Billy Roberts, my roommate from Auburn from LaGrange, who lives up in Brookhaven, not Atlanta, says is now not 5 counties, but 22 counties and 6.5 million people.
You got a lot of talent in that Gwinnett County area alone. I mean, there's about 25 high schools, I would imagine, in Gwinnett County at this point. I mean, you still got talent throughout this state. You are going to have sort of that base in the metro Atlanta area where people have been moving in and people have brought their families, and that talent has kind of spread. And that's why there are programs like Grayson, like Buford, some of the top programs in the country that are right around that area. But there's still a whole lot of talent in South Georgia. Kind of talking about Kirby being from Bainbridge. He's always going to be around those guys, but it's hard. And we've talked about this some too. Going to be very interesting in these next few recruiting classes to see how Florida State affects Georgia, because Florida State's going after some of those guys, especially in South Georgia, not too far from Tallahassee, that in the last probably decade, Georgia's had a really good shot at locking up, while Florida State's kind of been lost, at least in the last 6 or 7 years, I guess I should say. But yeah. I mean, there's still a lot of talent spread throughout this state. You're never going to ignore South Georgia because there's a lot of talent, a lot of proven talent, a lot of proven programs down there. But Metro Atlanta, that Gwinnett County, if any coach from any team could put a fence around Gwinnett County, they'd be in pretty good shape for that upcoming recruiting class.
Like Buford, Georgia. I mean, it's just
right.
Yeah, and you're right. I watched Mike Norvell the 4 years at Memphis. I think he's a great coach. And last year when they beat LSU, I was saying they're going to win 9 or 10 games. They won 10. I rubbed off my crystal ball right before the show. I think they're going to win 12 this year in the regular season. But they got KJ Bolden, Auburn and Georgia and Florida. What you're starting to see is that Florida State brand come back. And a great brand is like a bonfire you build on the side of the river on a big camping trip with 25 or 30 people, which we do a lot on the Spring River and whatever. The next morning, the first person up goes over there and blows on those coals. It doesn't take much to get it going. And the bigger the brand, the more quickly it comes back. Florida State brand, Georgia brand. Now the Auburn brand, they're trying to, wake it up. But, man, I'm going to tell you, Jordan, I like that. From Roy Munson in Sylacauga, Alabama, 90,000 people aren't going to Auburn because they expect to lose. It'll be a better game than people expect. It will. But if Auburn can't find some offense, you're right. That Georgia team, it's not that they just keep going along. I think they're challenged every day. And and look, you give great takes on this every time, but they're going to be ready. I know you got other things to do. Will you let people know how they can keep up with you? Folks, if you follow Georgia and you love college football, Jordan is like the ticker at the bottom of the screen. He's constantly putting out new information. You may not have a newspaper where you live now, but you damn sure got Jordan Hill, and we're honored. And as Coach Dye would say, proud to be associated with you. Every coach, every manager, and I'm going to say this, every guest and every True Grit journalist like Jordan Hill. Thanks for being with us. Let them know they can follow you.
I really appreciate that, Rob. Dogs247.com on Twitter, at Jordan Davis Hill on Twitter, at Dogs247. I'd say for any of the Auburn fans listening, at 11 a.m. Central, 12 Eastern today, Thursday, me and Auburn Undercover's Nathan King are going to do a live podcast, given sort of the perspective of both Georgia and Auburn, sort of what we expect to see. So that'll be a fun one. I would make sure and tell people to keep an eye out for that. But yeah, excited for this weekend. Excited to be back in Alabama and back in Auburn. It's going to be a fun one, no doubt.
Well, it's a family reunion. I don't care, and I God at the Sigma Newhouse, 715 West Georgia. I bet you almost half our fraternity was from Georgia, and they were from one town in particular, Carrollton, Georgia, home of the Trojans. I mean, my God, Big Chick, Sam Haney, Bill Hamrick, Tom Clanton. Good Lord. I love it, man. Hey, thanks so much for being with us. We're going to take a break. We're going to head up to Tuscaloosa. How funny. Georgia and Alabama back to back. It's the two top programs in the country. But we will be right back with more in just a minute. You've been hearing from Jordan Hill. We appreciate it. Got a great show ahead of us. Roy Munson, I believe you, man. Roy from Ocelot, Iowa. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Side
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. And great stuff. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, as always, covers Georgia. He covered Auburn for a long time. He gets that rivalry. And that is going to be a much better game than people expect. What is Auburn's path to victory? It's going to be, you're going to have a quarterback. You're going to have to find a quarterback. And I don't know if they got it. It's so hard to change your identity in the fifth game of the season. It's very, very difficult. And if you're Georgia, this is your first road game of the year. You got to think about that. But what when you've got a defense like Georgia does, the offense has more confidence. Hey, let me say something real quick about Corona Transport Corporation. They specialize in hauling cotton in the Mid-South. Give Robert Weaver a call, 901-606-4645. Dream Weaver. His father's been in that business for a long, long time. He learned it working in the field, farming, driving tractors. He knows that business. Robert Weaver, Corona Transport Corporation. Again, 901-606-4645, a member of Club 250. We love people like that. Giving him a shout out. I've known him a long, long time. He will deliver the goods. All right, Gary Harris going to join us here in just a moment. Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. And the bottom line is, it is college football season, and you absolutely love what is going on. And when you bring in Gary Harris, another one of the guys that is on the beat covering college football, basketball, whatever's in Tuscaloosa, can I tell you, if a story happens, you look at what the national media says from 35,000 feet. You ever notice when you're flying across the country and you wonder what's going on down below? Down on the ground, the boots on the ground. You want to hear the truth? You may not like it because it doesn't fit your narrative. You're going to get it. Gary Harris, Rodney Orr, Tider Insider TV, Tuesday nights at 6:30, but also a great radio show he does Monday through Friday on Tide 100.9. I got the app on my phone. Hey, I'm an Auburn grad. Y'all know that. But I love all these schools. I pull for all of them. And I think if we ever wondered, Gary, how much we need each other, it was during the year of the virus. I was going, you know what? A lot of people around the country wanted to shut college football down. But like I told somebody, if it shorts everybody on the Congo, we will play college football. We will do it. We will find a way to do it because Southerners love getting together. And as Elvis said, when we get together, there's a lot of eating and a lot of fun, and we love talking about it, man. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Rob.
Man, you excited about what happened last Saturday? Kevin Steele is starting to see that personality. Dallas Turner looks like he's ready to play.
Yeah, I think the defense has been playing well all year outside of the fourth quarter against Texas where, Texas got to them. It's easy to forget that Texas only had 13 points going into that fourth quarter. And outside of that, they gave up a late touchdown to Middle Tennessee, gave up 7 there. They gave up 3 to South Florida after a muffed punt return effort. And they gave up 10 to Ole Miss, and that's the lowest output that Kiffin has had as the head coach of the Rebels. So the defense has been really good, and I think that's going to be the personality of this team. I think the defense is going to be good going forward. I think why a lot of people are excited is even though it wasn't like it was a prolific output, particularly with, you look at the offenses they've had around here the last 10 years or so, but I think people are excited about what they saw from the offense in the second half against Ole Miss, just the ability to control the ball, get first downs, get 18 points in the game, outscore them 18-3 in the second half. And really for the first time all year, I thought we saw, Alabama's personality, kind of what they want to be on offense. The offensive line finally was able to lean on somebody. I think Ole Miss's defensive front got tired. Those 2- and 3-yard runs from McClellan became 5, 6, 7, 8-yard runs. I thought in the second half, I don't know what else you could ask of Jalen Milroe, Rob. He was outstanding in the game in the second half. He had the really bad interception in the first half where he didn't see the guy that was kind of floating out there in coverage. But in the second half, didn't throw many incompletions, hit a couple deep balls, hit the intermediate routes, had command of the huddle, and they just, really wore Ole Miss down. And I thought it was, based on what we've seen this year, the best half of football that Alabama's played all year. And you hope that that's something that they can kind of hang their hat on going forward. I think that's the team that they want to be really good on defense, offensively, don't turn it over, move the football consistently. They're probably not going to score, a lot of points. This is not going to be one of those teams like we've seen with Bryce and Tua and Mac that's going to average 40-something points a game, or some points in, some of those games. I've covered them all. They've had games where they actually held the score down. I mean, there have been good games where Alabama could have, scored 70, 75, 80 points. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, they really could have had they chosen to do so. This year, getting to 30 probably is going to be it's going to be a stretch. So you're going to have to be, play good defense. You have to be good in the kicking game. And offensively, you're going to have to take care of the ball and move the football and wear the other team down. And if you have that formula, then you're going to have some 24-10 wins in the SEC like they had over Ole Miss. So, yeah, I thought the second half was the first time all year in the fourth game of the season that kind of think we saw what Alabama wants to be.
Go back 6 years ago, Alabama was averaging about 31 points a game. Then you go from Jalen Hurts to Tua. He goes up to about 45 points a game. You said it. You and Rodney both have been ahead of the tip of the spear on this. You said, look for Alabama to not be so quarterback dependent this year, which will be a different kind of team. Then you bring in Kevin Steele, who loves to chew on those cigars, but you're getting the toughness back that you did not have, in my opinion, the last 4 years. It was different. But when Dallas Turner got with one arm and flipped Jackson Dart, and I think there were holding penalties on Ole Miss anyway, but the way he got up, that confidence, there's a swagger back with Alabama's defense. That's what I saw.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, it's hard. I've discussed this, Rob. It's hard to beat everything. I think fans sometimes, they want to score 45 on offense. They want to give up 6 on defense. You know, they want to be able to go for 500 yards of offense and give up 175 yards. That's hard to do. And sometimes when you're prolific on offense, as great as that is and as fun as that is, it's tough on your defense. Think about this. When you're playing Alabama with Tua or Mac or Bryce, and you know that they're probably going to get 40 points, your offense is already in, hey, we're going to have to score some points. So you're probably throwing the ball a lot yourself. And Alabama a lot of times would score quickly. The defense would be right back up there. They'd have a lead. The other team was always throwing, always looking for big plays. And a lot of times, and this impacts your defense. You've seen this, Rob, with Alabama. You might be up. We saw it last year against Mississippi State. Mississippi State was down 30-something to nothing. But Mike Leach didn't want to get shut out. You know, he wanted to score a touchdown. And that last drive, they're calling timeouts, and they're doing everything they can to put points on the board. And that impacts your defensive stats. A lot of teams never really wanted to run the clock out against Alabama because I think the feeling was, you know, if we can just get a couple touchdowns here, we can do something against Alabama, it'll look good on our resume going forward. So the way they played offense, I think, hurt the defense. This type of offensive approach is going to help your defense. It is. You know, the offense is going to be on the field longer. Hopefully that's the plan. You know, they're going to be taking time off the clock. And so with Kevin Steele's expertise and an offense that's going to be more of a ground and pound type of attack, I think this defense can flourish.
Offensive line, there's a lot of talent, a lot of big guys there. Are they so big that it makes it difficult to bend and move? I mean, it's as big an offensive line as there may be in college football. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, Rob, that I see it two ways, and I'm no offensive line coach, that's for sure.
Neither am I.
But I do think that you know, I've said from the get-go that I think Proctor's a little heavy.
Yeah.
I think that weight's going to come off as he goes throughout his career. But I think the biggest thing, and this is why I preface my comments by saying I'm not an offensive line coach, but I talk to a lot of them, as you do. You know, certain things in offensive line play. I don't care how big, you can't reach. You can't reach, and you can't be off balance. I mean, you've got to plant your feet. You got to have a firm base, and you got to engage those defensive linemen. And it's not laziness, but it's just poor technique. And I think that Proctor in particular has played with a lot of poor technique, and some of those guys on that offensive line have. And they are big enough and strong enough and athletic enough, believe it or not. Those are talented players that if they improve their technique and they do what they're asked to do by the coach and come together and play as a unit, I think they've got a chance to still be good. And I thought we saw that in that second half. That was the first time all year. Again, I've seen they were leaning on Ole Miss. That defensive front was giving ground, and you knew that Alabama could run the football. And that's something that we haven't, you know, seen a lot of this year. And we saw it against South Florida. Say what you want about South Florida. I think they're going to wind up probably being a little bit better than what we thought. But Alabama was able to run the ball against South Florida in the second half and lean on them. So that's 2 weeks in a row that the offensive line has made improvement. So, again, I have been hard on Proctor. I mean, I've been hard on him. But he is a true freshman, and he is playing one of the most difficult positions on the field. And last week, I liked what they did with bringing Pritchett in some. They brought Ferguson in at guard. You know, they brought some other offensive linemen in and played some different combinations. And I think that for Proctor, maybe just getting over there and watching it from the sideline a few possessions was good for him, because in the second half, that was his best half of football. So I don't know if it's as much their weight as it has been their technique, but I think sometimes if you're a little overweight, it certainly impacts your technique. So I think that has been the case with him. But you know what, too? During the season, as active as he is playing a game every week and as much as goes on during the week, he's probably, hopefully, going to lose some weight. I thought he looked, you know, this is just my eyeballs.
Yeah.
I thought he looked a little slimmer on Saturday than he did looking at the video from the first game. So maybe that's something that he'll improve on throughout the season.
Yeah, and I like it. Uncle Crimson in Hueytown, Alabama, home of the Allison gang, isn't it? Isn't that where they're from?
Yeah,
Bobby,
that's it.
Yeah. Roy Dale is a damn good running back. And speaking of that, before we go to this question,
and I do know very well, and that's what Uncle Crimson's saying. I covered him in high school And we've seen, Rob, going back to the early 80s, 70s, whatever, a lot of great high school running backs in the state of Alabama. You can say what you want about Alabama high school football. It doesn't match up against Georgia, Florida, Texas. And numbers-wise, it doesn't.
It does.
But running back-wise, we've seen some of the best in the world come through here. And I'm telling you something, Roydell Williams in high school at Hueytown, almost untackleable. I mean, he was a dominant high school running back, and he's been really good at Alabama. Yeah. And I think that he'll have a chance to play an opportunity to play in the National Football League too.
Yeah, and I remember him in high school because my friend Donnie Jones from Hueytown lives down in Gulf Shores. He's the only man who's got the best life. He lives in Gulf Shores down on the beach and goes fishing, and he works, but he gets to fish all the time on the Gulf. And he goes to Auburn, but when he goes home, he goes back to the beach. I mean, that's as good as it gets, man. But from Hueytown. And but I'll say this about Alabama high school football. Someone just sent this in a reminder. Name me a county in America that's produced 3 Heisman Trophy winners. Shelby County. I mean, I'm Jefferson County. Pat Sullivan, Bo Jackson, and Jameis Winston out of Bessemer. Home of Bright Star, one damn good restaurant. But I think Alabama high school football, Gary, is outstanding. I love following Northridge because Dr. Waller May and Susan May and John May plays for them. But I love high school football. We all do. You cover high school football like very few people do. You go to Reform, you go to Utah, and folks, that is spelled EUTAW.
In fact, Rob, we got one of the great high school rivalries in the state of Alabama tomorrow night. Pickens County, just down the road from Gordo, the 8 Mile War. Yep. They travel that 8 miles from Reform to Gordo tomorrow night to get it on. And that's a big one. That's one that, Pickens County is just a 1A school. And I tell you, I was surprised. They lost a 1-point game, 21-20 last Friday night to South Lamar, which caught me off guard. And Gordo has the one loss to a very good Bibb County team, but they're both 4-1. And they'll play tomorrow night there at Gordo, and that's a beautiful facility back behind the school. And the cars will be from the little town all the way through the school parking lot, close to the field as they can get. People will be up on the hill outside the stadium. They'll be hanging out around the fences. It'll be one of those where it'll be standing room only tomorrow night in Gordo, Alabama. I promise you that.
Yeah, and the Gordo
everybody will be there. Everybody, I always say it. I'm kidding when I say this, but if you wanted to go to Reform and commit a crime, it'd be the night to do it because everybody in Reform will be in Gordo.
Damn right. Well, there are 2 people that I know of from Gordo. David Housel, legendary sports information director at Auburn, and another guy, Kevin Steele.
Yeah, also Larry Blakeney.
Wow, Larry. Wow, we had Larry. Good.
You knew Larry was from Gordo, didn't you, Rob?
I did not. Well, maybe I forgot. We had Larry on the show last year. Lot of fun. He was a Sigma Nu at Auburn with Ralph Jordan, with Pee Wee Jr. But I love that this high school. I like this from John in Memphis. We need more Garys on TV. He loves what he does. He's one of the best. We do. And I love the local, having started my career out as a TV guy, there in Columbus, Georgia. But it's so, when you go out and cover these high school games, I mean, we had a big coverage here. We went 75 to 100 miles. I mean, Eufaula. I remember watching Fred Smith play down there. And last year, 2 years ago, when Auburn and Georgia State played, we talked to sportscasters, Jacques Patterson and Rex Castillo there at Channel 3, and they counted 42 players on the Auburn and Georgia State rosters. They said, we covered those guys in high school. Wow. Do you ever keep track of all the guys? And, you talked about Alabama high school and Mississippi high school football. Good God almighty. It's the 9th most talent-rich state in America. Mississippi is, and Alabama's 6th, Louisiana's 7th, Pennsylvania's 8th, and Illinois is 10th, believe it or not.
Yeah, I covered a lot of good teams in Mississippi too, and a lot of Friday nights over there, and in Jackson and in Meridian, just some incredible high school football talent. And I always remember when I was working over there, the challenge for State and Ole Miss and Southern Mississippi, they always would preach on this. If we could just keep the best players in the state of Mississippi at home, we could contend for championships, but it was hard to do because LSU, Alabama, Florida State, University of Tennessee, Arkansas, University of Memphis. I mean, Auburn even started coming over quite a bit into Mississippi, and they would, they'd come after that top tier Mississippi talent, and it was a challenge. But that was another thing when I worked over there too. I can always remember. Of course, now we've expanded a lot, but I always remember the State and Ole Miss people saying, "Well, give Southern Miss credit, but boy, it'd be a lot easier on us if there was not another third Division I program in this state to have to recruit against." But you're right, some great high school football over there.
Well, and you genuinely love covering it, and that's why it's so important that you keep doing this. And the local people, they know the stories that nobody else knows. I mean,
I'm going to tell you a story that people may not know. You'll get a kick out of this one. When I was in Mississippi, because I got looks like about 4 minutes here left.
Yeah.
I was not over there when Marcus Dupree was coming out of Philadelphia High School, but when after he had played at Oklahoma and with the Breakers and tore up his knee, he came back to Philadelphia and he was battling some depression and just, having dealt with, Kenneth Fairley and had all that money taken from him and everything else. And, he ballooned up to over 300 pounds, Rob. I don't know if everybody knows the story. I know it because I covered it.
Yeah.
And, but he made a decision one day that, I'm not going out this way, and I'm going to play in the National Football League. So probably 5-6 years after he had played football, been up 300 pounds, he got an aluminum shed, those aluminum storage sheds. He put an electric heater in there, and he started working out, lifting weights in there, and he started running. And here, now you're talking about, when I tell you his knee was tore up, I don't mean this was the days before, this is when they had to cut on it. I mean, his knee was one of the worst knee injuries that you could have. And so he wasn't 100% ever, but he went from right around 300 pounds down to about 225. And he made the Los Angeles Rams roster in 1991 and made the team and played for maybe a year and a half. And it felt like he would have played longer, but they had invested, I think, in Cleveland. Gary was their big money running back. Yeah. But he told me, he said, it didn't matter. I proved I could do it. I played in the NFL. I scored a touchdown. But you think about what kind of athlete we're talking about.
Oh, God. To
come back from that severe knee injury. Barry Switzer still says he's the most talented player he's ever coached. And to come back, to go to 300 pounds, to get yourself back in that kind of shape and play in the NFL, probably at, I don't know, Rob, I'm saying maybe 65, 70% of what he was when he was healthy. You'll never, that's why that documentary, 30 for 30, the best there never was. If he had stayed healthy, and I'm not knocking Bowen, I'm not knocking Herschel, and I'm not knocking George Rogers, I'm not knocking any of them.
I agree.
But there's never been a combination of size, speed, and strength like Marcus Dupree ever in the history of running backs. 6'2", 6'3", 230 pounds, 4'4", 40, 450-pound bencher. Switzer changed from the wishbone to the eye, and I'm running out of time, but I get passionate about this because when he was at Philadelphia High School, you can go back and watch the films, he was untackled. They couldn't tackle him. They could not tackle the guy. All they did, Joe Wood was the coach, is just pitching the ball, and he just ran through guys like they were. And what he did that year at Oklahoma as a freshman, when he came back, I'll finish with this. Yeah. He came back against Arizona State in the bowl game. Arizona State had the number one rushing defense under Darryl Rogers in the country. Marcus was out of shape, had not practiced, was injured, and lit them up for nearly 250 in the first half.
Yeah.
That's how good that guy was.
Yeah, and Jacques Doucet is going to be on with us in just a second, WAFB Channel 9 in Baton Rouge. He's got a documentary coming out October 15th on Cecil the Diesel Collins. That's another one.
Yeah,
again, you're not going to get that without the local. I absolutely eat local, buy local, spend local. But you want to know what's going on? Drill down on your local teams. Gary Harris, that's one of the coolest. I've never heard that story. Yeah. We're trying to get Marcus on the show here soon.
Yeah, I can help you with that, Rob. I'll help you with that. But listen,
I love that guy.
I know him well. Again, to not have played football for 5 years, 6 years, whatever it was, to make it in the NFL, to make a team. I don't know. That's one of the greatest stories in the history of football that most people don't realize. Even if they watch the documentary, I don't think because it focused more on the Oklahoma, the high school, the issues with Kenneth Fairley. But to come back and make the Los Angeles Rams roster 5 or 6 years after playing football, 300 pounds, tore up knee. Just shows you what a gifted athlete he was. Hey, thank you, Rob.
Yeah. Hey, you bet. Gary Harris, catch him. Tide 100.9 WVUA Channel 23. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Have a great
man.
day. You bet. All right. Jacques Doucet. That was the cool stuff. Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa, WVUA Channel 23. And he and Rodney Orr do Tider Insider TV Tuesday nights at 8:30. Already got the questions coming in for you.
Uh-oh.
I love it. From Ernie McCracken. Is that the Big E from Kingpin in Scranton, Pennsylvania? Tigers are going to roll the Rebels. And we're going to be joined in just a second. I've got some other guys be on here with us. So we got a lot of stuff we want to ask you while you're on here with us. John Hartwell, AD at ULM, will be on with us. And Matt Dean, whose son is on the staff with Dan Landing at Oregon. And he did a little live StreamYard in with us from Oregon last week. It was our first ever dark caller. It was still dark out there on the Pacific Coast. It was early in the morning out there because of the time difference. But man, I sent that trailer out to about 20 different groups of people last night of the Cecil Collins documentary that you're going to be releasing October 15th. And the responses were like from Pierre T. Landash, from Baton Rouge, no surprise, an LSU fan. Pierre, and oh my God, can Pierre cook? I mean, it's an insult. It's like Blake Kleinpeter and Tanner Smith from Lake Charles, members of our hunting club. They might start cooking around 5 or 6. We might not eat till 11 or 12, but pretty liquored up. You don't really care. You lose track of time.
Yeah.
Tigers are going to roll the Rebels. Let's talk about that game in the vault Saturday, because those two teams, the fan bases, especially a lot of the older Ole Miss fans, hate LSU way more than Mississippi State.
Yeah, it's a big game. Certainly, I think we still don't know a whole lot about both LSU and Ole Miss. I know Ole Miss coming off a pretty disappointing effort at Alabama. I think they felt like Alabama was vulnerable and they had a shot to beat them, and they just didn't score any points last week. LSU, of course, the disappointing opener against Florida State, a scrimmage against Grambling, wiped out Mississippi State in Starkville. And then last week, LSU's offense really had to bail out LSU's defense to survive Arkansas and Tiger Stadium. So I know Ole Miss doesn't feel great about their rushing attack with their star running back only has 200 yards after he had 1,500 or so last year. And I know that the Egg Bowl is the huge rivalry in Mississippi, but I think there's no team that Ole Miss likes to beat more than LSU. And certainly if they can pull it off, they'll be very excited. Interesting thing that has gained some attention here, Rob, is that Ole Miss is going to honor their 2003 SEC Western Championship team. Yeah. Although video evidence proves that LSU beat Ole Miss in Oxford 17-14 to go to the SEC Championship and win the BCS Championship. So if Ole Miss was playing somebody else, maybe it would go over their head, Arkansas. Yes. But when the team that did go to the championship is there and you're honoring, I think that's not going to go unnoticed. You're kind of what's the old saying? Denial isn't just a river in Egypt.
Yeah, you're correct, sir. Yeah, from Tanner in Memphis, go Tigers, and they're going to be playing neck in the first half. Hey, I had a lot of confidence there, but look, I agree with you. That 2003 was as close. I think it was 17-14. LSU won that game, went on to win the national championship, 21-14 over Oklahoma in New Orleans. If you would, and we'll take a break here in a couple of minutes, and then we're going to roll into the next hour for a few more minutes with you, because I know John and Matt have questions, but great job. And I listened to you on the Rebel Yell hotline Monday with my friend Yancey Porter. I listened to you. Great stuff. You undersell yourself. You really do know what's going on with LSU. And I like what you said, 2-time Sportscaster of the Year. You go, well, it took me 22 to get there, but not many people can say that. And that's a hell of an honor.
Well, yeah, it took about 20 years to win the first one. So, I tell the kids that are interning and are hard on themselves or in college, it's like, look, man, I didn't really find a stride until I was in my 40s. I mean, I worked hard and I did the job, but, just, it's the man upstairs comes along, blesses you.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the defensive line for LSU. Mason Smith is a cool story. He got hurt last year, first game against Florida State. Then he didn't play in the game this year What's his status? Talk about his development. Talk about the rest of the defensive line because there are always some full-grown men, as the coaches like to say, on that front seven at LSU. And this year, they've got some.
Yeah, Mason Smith is coming back from that injury. I think he is getting himself back in the football shape once you don't play for a year. He's as good a kid as you'll find. He sees you, he'll tell you hello and hello, Mr. Jacques, and all that. And certainly a guy who I think a lot of people believe is going to be a future NFL talent. He has not made, I guess you would say, a huge impact so far this year. There haven't been any plays where like, wow, but when you're a defensive lineman, sometimes you're doing unselfish work. You're engaging offensive linemen to free up your linebackers to make the tackles and whatnot. So Savion Jones flashed against Mississippi State. I don't know how much he flashed last week. LSU did sack the quarterback 4 times last week, but there were plenty of other times where, KJ Jefferson, who was a grown man at about 253 pounds at quarterback, hard to get to the ground, slipped away and made some big plays. So I do think that LSU probably needs a little better play from their defensive line and certainly better play in their secondary. For a school that calls themselves DBU, I don't think they've really lived up to that, Rob. If you take a look at the stats real quick, four games into the year is a pretty good sample size, and LSU 99 in the country in third down defense and not so great in some other categories.
Yeah, and I got that last night from a friend of mine, Jared Montague, who's from father went to East St. John in Reserve High School down there. And he said, yeah, exactly that. And of course, he grew up down there and in Houston, lives in Memphis now. But and he's one of our regular Ironman cooks over there from Mardi Gras at St. Louis Catholic Church in Memphis. The Holy Trinity he always talks about: celery, onions, and bell peppers. But he said, for DBU, where are we this year? I mean, we got a lot of LSU people, Jacques, in Memphis. Of course, with the interwebs, we're all over the place, with the way we broadcast. But a lot of LSU. I got a bunch of them. I go to mass with at St. Louis, and man, anytime there's anything that needs to be cooked, they step up to the plate. They rule, others drool. Harold in Oxford, Mississippi. Rebels are due for a great game. What is it that you're most concerned? Let me bring John Hartwell in too. John, AD at ULM, follows this stuff. And by the way, Jordan Love, I watched that game. I know you were there with him his whole time at Utah State. They're down 17-0 against the Saints the other day. Jacques, you saw that? 17-0. And I'm just watching this. I said, I know what's going to happen. Jordan Love's going to take them down the field and lead them to 18-17. That was crazy. Can they go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love? Can you keep having those quarterbacks? Jacques, that you cover the Saints too, but that was a heartbreaker.
Yeah, my parents were in town, and I joked with my mom at halftime. I said, well, let's see if the Saints can win this one 17-16, because they were up 17-0. In my gut, I had a feeling something was coming. And sure enough, I was 2 points off. It was 18-17 that the Saints lost. So that was one of those games where you feel like I wish I would have done something outside for 3.5 hours instead of and watch that game. But that was an old school 1980s Saints meltdown there.
Yeah, and John was a deputy AD at Ole Miss, 2003, 2012. Jacques covers LSU, WAFB Channel 9 in Baton Rouge. This rivalry, John, we talked about it. Jacques made a great point. JACQUES, and his LSU's legendary basketball coach Dale Browne once asked him, why the S? But living in Louisiana, Dale's from North Dakota. We forget that. I don't think a lot more names like that up there. But anyway, talk about the how big that LSU game is. You were there for 9 or 10 of them in Oxford.
Yeah, and people always talk about the Egg Bowl, which obviously is a special rivalry too. But I really thought, at least from the perspective of, like you said, 10 football seasons there, and my wife and father-in-law are Ole Miss Rebels through and through. I really think for the Ole Miss people that the LSU game, and it goes all the way back to the Billy Cannon, days and that storied game. I really think the Ole Miss people get up more for the LSU game than they do maybe even for the Egg Bowl against Mississippi State.
Yeah. Jacques, and it's the Magnolia Bowl is what they call it. But the people, Mississippi's a funny state. From Jackson south, they get most of their news from New Orleans. You get up in North Mississippi, it's more from Memphis. And it's then when I call the land that time forgot, when I go to Orange Beach, like I did a couple of weeks ago, you take Highway 45 and you go through towns like Buckatuna and Scuba and Macon, Mississippi. And I don't think anything has changed since I was a kid, because that's the old way we used to take the Destin. But Jacques, a few more minutes with you. I know. Tell me what your travel. Are y'all going to Oxford? You said Friday you'll cover stuff, and then you'll have another crew there. But y'all go wherever the Tigers go.
Yeah, we make all the road trips. We'll go live from the Oxford campus Friday, and then we're staying 45 minutes away somewhere else, and then cover the game. And just to add a little bit to what your great guest was saying, I had a chance to kind of get to know Billy Cannon late in his life, and wonderful story. And back when that game was really the biggest game in the country, I think, when LSU used to play Ole Miss in the 50s and the 60s, Billy had some issues. But he was, the LSU fans, they were really disappointed in him for a long period of time because he went to prison. And then really they fell in love with him all over again. And by the time he had passed away, he was as popular as ever. He had a great sense of humor. I'd say, hey, Billy, how you doing? He'd say, I'm doing pretty good today, but every now and then I just get the urge to print money, and he would say stuff like that, just make jokes about himself. And, they did a press conference for the 50-year anniversary of the Billy Cannon run. And he'd say, I hadn't seen this many cameras since the FBI showed up, so he was a wonderful, wonderful guy. And that series really, Louisiana, Mississippi, we're the same, right? I mean, we're right next to each other and everybody knows everyone. And so I think fans like going to Ole Miss where they dress up, it's the Southern charm and the bow ties and the women wear their nice hats and everything. It's a special place.
Matt Dean, you were just out there in Oregon. Your son's on Dan Lanning's staff. We're talking to Jacques Doucet, WAFB Channel 9 in Baton Rouge, about this Ole Miss LSU game. That is a rivalry. I mean, I got a lot of friends on both sides, and I will say this: my Ole Miss friends, they hate LSU. They have fun with it. They all know each other. Like someone said the other day on the show, Mississippi and Louisiana are like one big state anyway. That's why the Southeastern Conference is so special. But what do you think is going to happen in this one?
Good morning, guys. It's interesting because 2 weeks ago, we thought LSU, after they really put it to Mississippi State, would kind of roll Arkansas, and they survived last weekend, right? And we thought Ole Miss had the momentum to come into Tuscaloosa with the way Alabama had been playing and possibly pull the upset. A week later now, all my Ole Miss friends are saying, oh, we're going to be fine. We're going to get LSU in Oxford. And I still like LSU. I just think since week one, they've kind of found their identity. And, to my knowledge, when you get in the third or fourth weekend of conference play, there's enough tape out there on everyone that there are no more secrets. And I just think from the line of scrimmage standpoint, I just think LSU has an advantage.
Yeah. Jacques, when you look at LSU's passing game, man, that combination, Jaden Daniels is playing some really good football. Is he, without him being on his A game, where does LSU stand? I mean, how good are their chances to win? Because he's really good. 13 hookups in the Mississippi State game, and for 235 yards. That's one of the 4 or 5 best games ever, I think, in Southeastern Conference history for a receiver.
Well, when you're a fifth-year senior, I think that's a big difference. What's the difference between a 46-year-old guy and a 41? Not much, but between a 23 and an 18, that's a big difference. And, and he doesn't, as far as going to the stadiums and whatnot. And last year he averaged 208 yards per game passing. This year he's at 324. Last year he threw 17 touchdowns in 14 games. This year he's already got 12. So he's doing the things they talked about in terms of pushing the ball down the field and being more patient. Don't just tuck and run. He started slow last week, but he came back. And so, yeah, he's on pace to have one of the biggest statistical years in LSU history. The problem is that the Joe Burrow thing happened 4 years ago, and that's never going to happen again, I don't think. But that's an incomparable, the unreachable star. That's not going to happen again. But he's doing amazing.
Yeah, and I look at LSU, that first loss, they've recovered quickly from that. And I mean, I don't the SEC, people will debate, is it an up year, is it a down year? Hell, we don't know. We say we don't have elite quarterbacks, but Jaden Daniels and KJ Jefferson, the two best quarterbacks, played each other last Saturday in Tiger Stadium, and the game literally went down to the last play for the Golden Boot. So that was a wild one. But one more thing before we let you go. You look at LSU as a team compared, say, to last year, the first team for Brian Kelly. Are they better? You think they can end up with a better record? Last year they won 10 games. They've got some experience. That Jaden Daniels has got a year under his belt, but how good can they be, and can they get to Atlanta and take on probably Georgia and bring the championship home?
I think they'll be favored in every game except for the Alabama game between now and early November. Certainly Alabama has shown they're not the Alabama of the past, but I also know that Nick Saban by early November was going to have that team looking different than they do now. I think Jalen Milroe can win games, and I think they can. He's got talent. Is he going to throw them to a national championship? Probably not, I don't think, but I certainly think LSU can win the SEC West again and have less than 3 losses in the regular season like they did a year ago and make it to play Georgia. But like I said, their defense looks shaky, and I think the offense is just going to have to, outscore people to perhaps pull it off and move them down the road. But you just don't know. I mean, a year ago, LSU goes to Texas A&M. Everyone's making jokes about the Aggies and Jimbo Fisher and this and that, and then A&M knocks LSU's teeth out to close out the year. So in this conference, the second you think you've arrived, ask Tennessee when they went to the Swamp, that's when you get beat.
Yeah, or last year at the end of the year in November, they went to Columbia 63-38, and that's the rematch coming up Saturday. But Jacques, let people know how they can follow you and keep up with you. Look forward to having you on next week. But great coverage as always, and we really appreciate you taking time to share with us on Sidelines.
Well, WAFB TV, at Jacques Doucet on Twitter. Our Cecil Collins documentary will air October the 15th. That's two weeks from this Sunday. And Terry Bowden, former Auburn coach, now at UM Monroe, makes an appearance. He makes a cameo talking about, we just couldn't tackle him. We couldn't tackle him, I tell you.
And nobody could. The legend of Leesville. You know who another legend from Leesville is? Eddie Fuller.
Yes, touched it. Earthquake Eddie.
Yeah. And if the transfer papers supposedly would have gone through, his father would have been moved over to Fort Benning, a mere 35 miles from Auburn's campus, and he may have been an Auburn Tiger. That's a 30 for 30.
Yeah, I tell you what, Tommy Hodson, LSU's quarterback, he's still LSU's all-time leading passer, 9,000 yards. And, he's like, to this day, my career has been reduced to one pass, an 11-yard touchdown to Eddie Fuller against Auburn in 1988.
Man, I was there. I was covered in beer with all the excitement of the fans above me, and it was like surreal. Like, did this just happen? With 1:47 left, man. Hey, great stuff, Jacques. Hey, John, Matt, everybody, hang on. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with more Sidelines. You've been listening to LSU Tigers with Jacques Doucet.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House Equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
I'm back here with you. John Hartwell, AD, ULM, Matt Dean, Associate AD, Rhodes College, world traveler out in Eugene, Oregon last weekend. Hung out for a couple of days with the Bhagwan at the compound there. I bet that was a wild time out there. Hey, just a reminder, Jordan Hill was just on with us in the first segment. Georgia versus Auburn preview, breaking down the Dogs and Tigers Junkyard Dogcast on YouTube today. 11 a.m. Central, 12. It's 12 o'clock Eastern, 11 Central. Again, 12 o'clock Eastern, 11 a.m. Central today. The Junkyard Dogcast on YouTube.com. Guys, a lot of questions coming in. People asking, college football. What y'all were off last weekend at ULM. You're back on this weekend, but college football is thriving, and Dr. Ken Ramey and the interns, get the stretchers ready. I think he was talking about the Ole Miss LSU game. Dr. Ken Ramey and the interns, do y'all remember them from wrestling? Oh, I mean, and Dusty Rhodes weighed in just a minute ago in the ring. It's whoop-ass time for the Tigers. It's going to be, I don't know if he's thinking they're going to get it or they're going to administer it, but let's get your take. Start with you, John. College football, how excited are you that the crowds, the fans, the enthusiasm, as Tony Barnhart says, even the adults can't mess it up?
Yeah. Hey, Rob, I was just waiting for you to bring out the Ivan and Nikita Koloff, version. You were getting deep into some wrestling there. So
oh yeah, absolutely.
Gives me flashbacks to the Mobile Municipal Auditorium and going to see wrestling on Saturday night. So anyway, yeah, college football alive and well. I mean, you look at the games last weekend, and obviously, Matt got to see quite a performance by the Oregon Ducks. And I think they kind of made a statement to Dion and the guys from Boulder. But you look at this weekend's games, and I know y'all are talking LSU, Ole Miss, Auburn, Georgia. We've got a big one here this week. We've got the App State Mountaineers coming to Monroe this weekend. So, a lot of great things going on, and the excitement around college football. And I know we've talked about this quite a bit, whether it's NIL or transfer portal, the interest and fan engagement and excitement about college football, I would argue to say it's as great, if not greater, than it's ever been.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That App State game is going to be big. Jerry Moore built a program up there, and I know a lot about it through my friend Tim Horton, running backs coach for 9 years with him up there. And Tim, one of the finest people I've ever known. His father, Harold, 38 straight wins, 3 national championships in 8 years. UCA, University of Central Arkansas in Conway, home of the Conway High School Wampus Cats. Matt Dean, did you ever recruit anybody from Conway, Arkansas High School, a Wampus Cat? Is that one of the greatest names you've ever heard of?
That's got to be right up there. We had some success recruiting in the Little Rock area. I had a great point guard from Little Rock Christian High School, Sarah Johnson, who's now a doctor. The funny thing is, I was at Eugene this past week, and I think I was on the show Saturday, and I told you guys, just felt like the staff was locked in, players were locked in. I didn't think at halftime it would be 35-0. It was really one of those performances. And then, the second half, they pulled Bo, I think, late third quarter. And, 42-6 is definitely, John, a statement win. But the college football is all about going 1-0. What I mean by that is if you're Colorado, you got to put that behind because USC's coming into Boulder. That's going to be another difficult test for them. They're still without their best player in Travis Hunter. I look at the SEC matchups, Robin. I'm just real curious on your take. I didn't get a chance to watch any of Auburn and A&M this past weekend because of the time change and being in a different game. Can your Tigers play with the dogs? That's my question. I'm real curious. That Georgia, at home kind of seems to have their comfort zone, but can someone get Georgia on the road or away from Athens this year? That's my question.
I think Auburn has a path to victory. One person said if multiple players for the Georgia team are injured or something, can't make the game. I've heard some other really crazy ones, but I think Auburn's path to victory is if they find a quarterback. But it's the 5th game of the season. You're pretty much who you are.
Yeah.
But that game began February 20th, 1892, Piedmont Park in Atlanta. Auburn 10, Georgia nothing. And I was talking with Jordan in the first segment. Auburn in this millennium is 7-16 against Georgia. Prior to this millennium, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, Auburn won the series in every one of those decades against Georgia. It all changed when, as some people pronounced it, Mark Richt came to Athens. And so, yeah, they've got a path, but they've got to play 1,000 times better on offense and get a quarterback who's not scared to stand in the pocket and will look for his second and third reads. And instead of running an RPO, if he sees 2 wide open receivers 10 yards downfield, don't run it and just get the first down by a yard when you could pick up another first down. Look for your somebody's got to step up. But the defense, they'll be ready to play. But I don't think 90,000 people are going to Jordan-Hare Stadium, another 50,000 outside the stadium because they know Auburn's going to lose. That's why they play the game, and that's what they do. So, that's my take. John?
Yeah, I think, I still think, and it was this way last year, in my opinion. I think maybe the best player in all of college football is Brock Bowers, the tight end from Georgia. He is unbelievably athletic and gifted for a guy that size. Actually, his dad played at Utah State. Utah State was the first school to offer him in the 7th grade, and he's from the Napa, Sonoma area of California. But he is literally in the college game when there's a lot of very impressive players. He looks like a man among boys, regardless of the game that he plays in. And I think Auburn's got to find a way to stop him. But again, like you say, in rivalry games like that, and we talked about LSU and Ole Miss maybe being as big as LSU and Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Again, Auburn, Alabama is king, but I can remember as a kid, Auburn, Georgia, and you had all the ties back and forth. Vince Dooley being at Georgia, he played at Auburn. Pat Dye being at Auburn, he played at Georgia. Those ties, when it's a rivalry game, momentum can be a dangerous thing, and any team can win.
Yeah, and you're right. It's the mental part of it. The most important 6 inches is between your ears. Matt, let's talk real quick. You were out in Oregon last week, though. Colorado went out there to play Eugene. We knew eventually it was going to be time for them to play a really good team. I think Oregon took their foot off the gas way too early.
Well, that's easy to say that, Rob, until your starting quarterback gets hurt in the 42.
No, I know. I'm just saying they could have scored every time they had the ball.
They were really electric. The only time in the second half before Bo came out, he had a deep route he underthrew for his first interception of the year. He's got 11 touchdowns, 1 interception through 4 games, rushed for multiple touchdowns. I do think, Oregon has had a unique blend this year of portal guys, and they've got some true freshmen that have actually logged minutes in games. And I think, when we define it sometimes as taking the foot off the gas, if you can get true freshmen in games and quality minutes, and I know John probably experienced that, as a basketball player at Division I level, it's just, in basketball, we talk about sometimes really good freshmen become sophomores before the freshman year's over. I mean, if you're out there and getting minutes, and I think Oregon's got a bigger cause. They're trying to win the Pac-12. And this year, if you can win the Pac-12, you've got a path to the playoff because of the way the conference is. And, I was kind of bummed. It was 42-0, fourth and goal up to 4, and we went for it and missed it. I was like, man, get the 45. I want a path to 50. I wanted a 50 burger. But, ultimately, Oregon sustained an injury to Noah Whittington, one of their talented running backs. And other than that, they stayed pretty injury-free. But that's a concern in football. Every week, it's such a grind, such a physical game. When you have a chance to take your starting quarterback out of the game and the win is secure, I think it's just smart.
Hey, Rob, I've got to throw in there as I know you have a lot of War Eagle faithful listening in. When you talk about the quarterback challenges at Auburn, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that got to be saying, what if Bo would have stayed at Auburn and had the opportunity to play in a Hugh Freeze system?
Yeah. Brian Harsin, I think, made it so miserable for him to be at Auburn. He left, and that was unfortunate. His father, a legacy there, but golly. I mean, Bo is. I wish him nothing but the best. I want him to be successful. But man, Oregon. If people think, John, and you coach, you were an athletic director, you're like a coach for 7.5 years in Logan, Utah. And right now, is it fair to say that the snow is starting to hit the ground out there? I know talking to you and your wife a couple of weeks ago, how much she enjoyed the winters out there, and you miss them, don't you?
hey, when I can go out
get
and
my Kleenex here and cry a little bit
and hop on my boat in the bayou, no, we don't miss it. It was beautiful, but in small doses. So
yeah, John, no, but they play good football all over the country. And Matt, you just saw going out there and firsthand, you go to Oregon, wherever Tyler is. 4 years at A&M now in his second year at Oregon. And I did talk to the old man Browne, Bobby Lee Sr. I said, Dad, didn't you say that architecturally speaking, once you get past 55 or 60,000 seats in a stadium, the noise, 70, 80, 90, 100,000 plus, it's more going up, but that 60,000 and below, it's all going on top of the field. Autzen Stadium. By the way, how many people did you see blowing duck calls out there? Do people blow duck calls? You know how cool that would be to have 60,000 people doing a high ball hail call? Then they have the feed chatter. It'd be crazy, wouldn't it?
Rob, we got to get you on the operations team because I'm not sure they've thought of that because I think, to your father's point, it was really, really loud. They had the attendance was 59,978, I think, which was the sixth largest crowd they announced in Autzen Stadium history. So they're just under 60. But man, they sacked Shedeur Sanders 7 times. And I know there was a few times where they had some mixed up signals at the line of scrimmage. It was a really tough environment. They were only past midfield guys one time prior to going in the fourth quarter. So the thing that I will tell you about Oregon, and in 2 weeks, they have to play at Washington. Washington may be playing, John, as well as anyone in the country right now in football. They're really, really good.
Yeah.
But Oregon now is like in the top 15 in 6 defensive categories. And I think that's the Dan Lanning effect. He comes from the Kirby Smart and Nick Saban tree. And these defensive and Tosh Lupoy has done a great job as coordinator. They're getting a lot better defensively. In a league that's known for offense, like, Washington beat Cal 59-32 the other night. Well, the Ducks are actually holding people to a limited amount of yards. And I've always said, if you can get a Pac-12 team to play like an SEC team, you have a path. And, You got to take care of Stanford this week, but they get a bye week before the Washington game. If they can beat Stanford this week and they get the bye game, they'll be 5-0 going to the Washington game, which is going to probably be, a potential site for game day in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And John, let me ask you this. Terry Bowden is your coach. And God, the guy knows football. You get to spend a decent amount of time with him, but he is a driven, hard-working guy. What are your expectations for him at ULM? Because you don't strike me as somebody who is okay with being just okay. You're a type A personality, which is a good thing. Your reputation is you're a hard ass. You expect a lot out of the people that work with you, that work around you, and you expect them to show up every day ready to work.
Yeah, and we are in the building process. That's why the next 2 weeks we have App State and South Alabama at home. The next 2 weeks, both of arguably two of the best teams in the Sun Belt, and an opportunity for us, to get ourselves in a position to play meaningful games in November. And I know that doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but hey, if you're not playing for a conference championship or positioning from a bowl game in November, it's hard to attract fans. And we feel really good about that. We've got to get that, one of these next two games, hopefully both of them, but we've got to play well. But, Terry is a program builder, and, at his sixth head coaching job now. And, he's got our guys believing. I was out at practice for a while yesterday afternoon, and, App State's a really good team. Their record's 2-2, but they lost at the end of the game at North Carolina, lost 40-34.
Yeah.
And then last week in Laramie, which is a tough place to play, 7,200 feet elevation there.
Yeah.
They're up with about 2 minutes left in the game, drive deep into Wyoming territory, go to kick a field goal to put them up 7. They're up 19-15. The field goal gets blocked, and Wyoming runs it back for a touchdown and wins 22-19. So we've got our work cut out for us, but excited about the opportunity this weekend and hopefully get to 3-1. And again, we get that win to start conference play, gives you a lot of confidence going down the stretch in conference play.
I mean, it does, and I like what you said. That App State brand is powerful. Sunbelt plays damn good football. I mean, there are 14 schools in there. They're really, really good. And I say this all the time, but it's just more fun. You don't want to have college football just be good in one little area. It's not good for the national brand and certainly not good for the national growth. All right, guys, got a lot of questions, and I can't type them all. Folks, send them in on YouTube, youtube.com/@sidelines_live. Okay. Also, if you missed the show live, we's on Monday through Saturday, as they say down in the Ouachita River Basin in North Louisiana. Ouachita, or some people call it Quachita. We are on Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Central, sidelines.live, YouTube. Watch us on YouTube. Look at John. Look at Matt. Two erudite scholars, coaches, athletic directors. You're going to learn a lot. And that is youtube.com/@sidelines_live, Monday through Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. Central. If you miss us live, it's posted immediately after the show at 10 a.m. Central. It's posted right there on YouTube, and you can go back and hear the show. So you may be driving along in my automobile through Northeast Louisiana. You could be driving on the Gulf Coast going to Orange Beach, Alabama, to Doc's Seafood. You could be going to Constantine's in Mobile to get you some great gumbo. You know how you know when it's real gumbo? Because there's a crab claw in the gumbo with a bay leaf in there. John, am I correct?
No doubt about that.
And if you go to Felix's or Wenzel's or whatever, it doesn't matter. All right, let's get started here from Smith Tanner, Lake Charles, Louisiana. I guarantee Justin Wilson used to say that. All right, Florida versus Kentucky. Gators +5. We're going to be real quick. I'm going to bounce back and forth, rapid fire, do this in about 5 minutes. Okay, Florida travels to Lexington, KY. They are +5 against the Wildcats. Matt, what's going to happen? Rub off that crystal ball.
Kentucky's 4-0. It's 11 a.m. kickoff. Florida's won 3 straight. I think it's a terrific game. I think it's a low-scoring game. I mean, Florida only scored 22. They had problems in the red zone against Charlotte, but their defense has gotten vastly improved. I think it's a pick 'em. I mean, the line. I think. I'm not going to talk to you about point spreads or overs and unders because of my vocation. But I think Kentucky. I'm a big Mark Stoops fan. I like Kentucky.
Yeah, and Mark Stoops is from Youngstown, Ohio. You know who else?
Where do you play college football at, Rob?
Mark Stoops?
Where do you play college football at?
Denison College.
For Hayden Fry at the University of
he played at Iowa. That's right. No, he played at Iowa. You're right. He did play at Iowa.
Yes, he did. Yes,
I was going to say, because, you know, Mark Stoops, you know where Bob Stoops is from?
Well, I would assume the same town. I mean, they're brothers.
That's why I said that.
And they both played for Iowa.
Yeah, exactly, for Hayden Fry. But here's the funny thing. Idiot Savant, Savant Thursday, as Dave Tompkins calls it, whenever we're on together, it's Savant Saturday, whatever. Both of Mrs. Stoops' sons, Bobby from Oklahoma and Mark at Kentucky, are the winningest coaches at their respective schools. How many moms, when they wake up in the morning, go, you know what? 2 of my sons are the winningest coaches in the history of the colleges where they coached the longest. Pretty amazing. Laramie, Wyoming, 7,200 feet. Just they say 7,165, but when John's there, it's 7,173 feet because John is 7'10". And no, but John, look, I want to ask you. We don't have to get into point spreads, but okay, that Florida-Kentucky game, that is going to be an interesting game. Can Florida go up there? And the 11 a.m. game, I like to say, favors the visiting team because you can take the crowd out of it early.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And, you either have latecomers to the game or depending how many libations the fans had on Friday night, they may not even show up at all. So it does give the opportunity for the visiting team to play well. One of the aspects of that a lot of people don't think about is they may say, well, hey, other than the crowd, what else plays into it? Well, when you play an 11 a.m. game, 18 to 22-year-olds, hey, they play that game and they can get back on the airplane and be back home for Saturday night to see their girlfriend or hang out with their buddies or whatever they're doing. So it fires them up even more. So, and again, a couple of weeks ago, Florida was written off. What's wrong with Florida? They lose to Utah. Utah's a really good football team. We've talked about them before. I think that's going to be a heck of a football game.
Yeah, too.
Yeah, and I like what you say. Let me ask you this before I've got several more of them. Your atmospheres at your games, the game day experience. Let's say at ULM, you get the word out. You want people coming there, obviously, to see the game, but it's more about coming to see, in your case, ULM and the tailgating, renewing friendships and relationships for business and all. And, you being the Howard Sprague of the athletic director world, you're much better looking than Howard Sprague, and you don't live at home with your mother. But I'm just saying, Howard lived at home, at least on the show, into his 60s with his mother, and she never let him stay out past 10. No, but when you think about this, you can write it off or whatever. There's just so much stuff. It's going to the games, and you've got some concerts coming up. Talk about that real quick down there in the Ouachita River Basin in Monroe, Louisiana.
Yeah, so I'll give you a perfect example. We've got a guy, Buddy, who's one of our, and that's his legit name. He brings his motorhome in every Friday morning, and he sent me a text yesterday. Hey, you coming for Friday noon steaks? And he cooks up a bunch of steaks out there. A lot of people working, our facilities and grounds guys getting ready for the game. He'll cook them one too, and they'll come by there. And we've got a nice little following. Doug Peterson, head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. His mom normally comes out for those Friday lunches. So you've got this whole group, and we normally have, not to the level they do in the SEC, but we've normally got by lunchtime on Friday, 25 or 30 RVs who pulled in their spots and setting up camp. And the further along you go in the day, Friday, even more. So it's a great tailgating tradition. And again, folks are excited about the App State Mountaineers coming to town this weekend and the opportunity that presents.
I love that scenario you're laying out there. And what Rick Moranis was in the movie, Honey, I Shrunk My Kids. I don't know what the deal is with the camera this morning or not, but I've shrunk my guests. John, you normally are much bigger on the screen.
Hey, so I changed this morning.
Oh, I know what it is.
I changed this morning from my phone to my computer. See,
okay.
I just wanted over my back shoulder there, my John Wooden pyramid. That's one of my proudest. I've got a lot of sports.
Oh, wow. But I'm pointing at it right now.
John Wooden pyramid of success, remains one of my treasured items that really I look to that on a daily basis for guidance and how to handle different situations.
Oh, absolutely. And hey, wasn't he was from Iowa or Indiana, wasn't he? I think he was. And I think he was a coach for 14 years before he ever got a team to the NCAA tournament. All right, Matt Dean. And remember, folks, and I knew that, Bobby Stoops, Mark Stoops, played for Hayden Fry at Iowa. And I'm going to ask you another one. Clemson, wow, -6.5 at the Q's. Syracuse, or as some folks down in the South call it, Syracuse. I'm like, no, it's Syracuse. Point spreads withstanding, who's going to win, Clemson or Syracuse? That's a weird, again, staying away from the point spreads, but that's they've struggled up there before with Syracuse.
Well, let's not forget Syracuse is 4-0. I think the game is played up in the Carrier Dome.
Yeah.
And psychologically, Clemson played their tails off last week, had a short field goal that unfortunately went wide left and lost in overtime to Florida State, who I think we all agree is one of the best teams in the country. So, I would think Clemson would be a little bit – I'm sure this has been a hard week for Dabo. You're 2-2. You've lost 2 conference games.
Yeah.
You got beat pretty good against Duke. You had Florida State on the ropes, and you lost in overtime. I think they bounced back, but I would not be shocked. It's college football if Syracuse took them down the wire and even won the football game.
Wow. John, game day atmosphere, the tension. You've got just a couple of minutes before you got to get into a meeting, but coaches need to be loose. And when an athletic director has your back, that makes you, to me, feel more confidence. It's like, happy wife, happy life. That's what all men, we want our wives to be happy. It's going to cost you, those hunting trips, those weekends with your buddies at the football game, or the road trips to see the Atlanta Braves bring home the World Series championship this year, which I think will happen. But I want your take on your typical day as athletic director at ULM. And when people, again, I always say this because Matt's at Rhodes, and we'll get to him in a second, but you're at ULM. Think about wherever you are. As an athletic director, what percentage of your day is spent fundraising, talking to donors or would-be donors, versus looking at the numbers, the budgets and stuff like that for each athletic program?
Yeah, I'd say probably 30 to 35% spent on some type of development work.
There you go.
Whether it's a lunch or a breakfast with a donor, phone calls, talking to people about their needs for the coming weekend, whether it's tickets, parking passes, things like that. Probably another 30% with our coaches, staff, whether it's scheduled meetings, dropping by just to say hello, see what's going on. You don't want coaches seeing you. The only time the athletic director comes around is I'll use the PG version, the oh shoot moment when hey, what's he here for? You want them to be comfortable, like you said. You've got to be to me the best relationships and the most productive relationships between coaches and athletic directors are when you're lock, stock, and barrel together. They've got to know that you've got their back. They've also got to know that, hey, when you have to say no or have hard conversations, those things can happen too. But especially in your marquee sports, football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, and a handful of others, depending on what institution you're at, you've got to have those concrete relationships. So it can't be the only day they see you is on game day or, during the game. You've got to, stop by practices, talk to the student athletes, things like that. And then, you better save about 20% of every day for the curveballs, for things. And some days it's more than that, for things unexpected. So,
Yeah. John, how do people reach out, get hold of you, contact you? They may be a ULM alum, fan, whatever, or just a fan of another school who goes, you know what? I'm from Mobile. I love everybody from Mobile because they don't freeze their seafood down there. And John knows what real gumbo is. And he used to eat at Wenzel's every other day.
Yeah. So Twitter, John_Hartwell. Follow all things ULM athletics at ulmwarhawks.com. And guys, as always, true pleasure to be with y'all today. Hope to see you on Saturday morning for a few minutes too on game day. And y'all have a great day.
Hey, look, last week we missed you. I don't know if you got the link or not, but we will do this also. Honk your horn in the tunnel an extra time or two just for John Hartwell next time you're in Mobile. John, have a great day. Look forward to seeing you again Saturday. Appreciate you being on with us. You bet. John Hartwell, AD at ULM. And you know what? I love talking about all this stuff behind the scenes because, Matt, you are always going to be a coach, and I think about somebody's in the Army. They could have been out 40 years. You're still going to call them by whatever rank they were in when they left. Interestingly, I asked my father-in-law from my first marriage, he was a colonel, lieutenant colonel when he got out. I said, how come Gaddafi didn't just become a 4-star general? Dictators, you can do whatever you want to do. He goes, well, when he led the coup to take over in Libya, he was a colonel. So he always remained a colonel. I think there's even a core of values among dictators. That's pretty interesting. But you and John together are like Flat and Scruggs, two peas in a pod, as Uncle Jed would say. It's fascinating to see the behind the scenes. But again, and I tell people this, just going to lunch with you that day this summer over in that cafeteria, everybody wants to talk to Matt Dean. It's just everybody wants to be around you because win or lose, you've got a positive message. You've got a son on the staff with Dan Lanning, and you got to be really, really, really proud of him. Talk about Dan Lanning as a coach and Deion. 42-6. Deion made a comment after the game. Take a good look at this because this is as bad as we'll ever be. It's a pretty bold statement. You got Southern Cal coming in Saturday. They're going to have to be ready to fight every game from here on out. It's a full 60 or you have no chance.
It's interesting, Rob. After the game, my best friend from Iowa, Tyler's godfather, Rob Scott, he made the trip out there because we've done back-to-back years. So we were at the UCLA game last year when we beat the 6-0 Bruins, and this year we're at the Colorado game. And Rob made a point, and it was really interesting. He said, hey, I don't know if this is a referendum on Colorado or a referendum on Oregon. And what he was saying is basically Oregon may be really good. And, because Colorado, Rob, we were there. If you look at the skill, they obviously missed Travis Hunter a lot, but even Shadur Sanders, Deion's other son, I believe Shiloh, the DB, if you can get Colorado right on the line of scrimmage, another, as Dion said, another 7 or 8 dogs, the rest of it looks pretty good. I'm not going to lie to you. They have a ton of pieces. So when we left there, we're really curious this week with Colorado and USC. First of all, it should be more of a game because it's in Colorado. The fan base, everything, the travel factor. I think it's an early morning kickoff out there. It should be a better game. But if Colorado plays USC really tough, that shows you how good Oregon is. I wasn't sure, Rob. I had watched them on TV 3 times. I left that stadium, first of all, thinking they have a chance to win every game. Not that they're going to, right? Every week you got to be 1-0. And I thought how well coached they were. It was 13-0 second quarter. I think it was 4th and 4 inside their own 20. And they run a fake punt with Casey Rogers, a defensive tackle, who goes for like 15, 20 yards. And after that, man, it was just smack you in the mouth every series. They scored the next 3 series up 35-0 at half. It was ball game. And I'm like, coaching matters. I know Lanning was in the just from inside information, he was in the building several days this week till 3 a.m. I mean, that's how locked in they are, him and his defensive coordinator, Tosh Lupoy, who used to be at Alabama. I mean, and with the Jaguars. I just think they are well coached. Year 2 of the project. They have a lot of pieces. They did lose Noah Whittington for several games. He's one of their stable running backs. Though Bucky Irvin, the Minnesota transfer, is just outstanding. Runs really hard, and Jordan James, sophomore, I believe from Georgia, is really talented as well. So, Rob, they are so fast, man. They have got a lot of foot speed. That's my impression of them.
Yeah, well, you see it here from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Thurston Howell III. Lovey and I are especially fond of the Ducks. And this team, the Wolfdons, definitely play FSU for the CFP National Championship. Thurston Howell III will live on in infamy. I do think that the Ducks are really good. We remember what happened last year in Atlanta, 49-3 in that game. And look, you were there, and you stayed the full 60 too. You don't leave with 10 minutes left.
And I took the abuse in the parking lot post game too from the Georgia fans. I want you to know that.
I'm sure they were more than hospitable to you after the game. And yes, kind like going, you guys will be okay. I mean, they're probably barking at you, but that's part of the fun of college football. Yeah. I want to ask you the tailgating experience out there at Oregon. Everybody thinks, you think about a beautiful town when you've got it's not is it the Cascade Mountains where Bend, Oregon is? You've got the mountains and you've got the open area like the desert and whatever in Cascade and Bend and Medford. But you know what is cool? The area between Portland and Corvallis, where Oregon State University is, the Beavers. You know what's interesting? A little bit of trivia that only someone, I got to know. There are 3 great movies that have been filmed out there because it rains a lot and it's kind of, they filmed Animal House, Faber College at Oregon State University.
Yeah.
They filmed the Friday the 13th, the Freddy Krueger movies between Corvallis and Eugene. And the third one that they filmed out there was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest at the Nervous Hospital in the state of Oregon. That's a great film area out there. So I have to ask you, did you see, did you recognize any? I mean, you've been out there several times.
Yeah,
but it's absolutely gorgeous out there, isn't it?
It really is, Rob. And we went up to an area called Florence. It's about an hour and 15 minutes away. So we went up to, we went out and saw the Pacific Coast and went to a casino establishment, played my favorite game of blackjack, and had a little success there. Felt good about everything on Saturday. Came back and had some good food. And quite frankly, the weather was 64 degrees at kickoff. It was just tremendous.
Wow.
And this group called the Navy Frogs, they're a bunch of SEALs. They jumped out of a plane to deliver the game ball. There's 6 of them, okay? And I'd never been in a stadium that had that environment.
Yeah.
It's just they're playing a little Thunderstruck, AC/DC on the speaker. They're coming in. First time since 1961 that a game ball had been delivered via a jumper, whatever you want to call their title. And you could just sense the crowd was so into it because they felt like everything had been about Colorado and not about Oregon. And they felt like, hey, we got a really good football team. We're going to show it. And they absolutely did for 4 quarters.
Yeah. All right. Got it. One thing. We got a few minutes left, about out of time. We're going to get into it, folks. Saturday morning on the Roundtable Saturday, we will attack these lines when Frank Duffy's on here with us. I mean, I'm going to be crunching these things and give you my thoughts tomorrow again and on Saturday. At the end of every time it's third down, every stadium in America, it's got to stop. We need a new song. I love AC/DC, but the dong, 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 the intro to Hell's Bells. All right, find the new song. I'm going to put in my vote for the new song that you want to play on the stadium loudspeakers when it's third down. And that is Leonard Skinner, give me 3 steps, give me 3 steps, mister, give me 3 steps toward the door. That's the new something better. But that song, they've worn it out. Do you have a better suggestion for on third down? Matt Dean from Davenport, Iowa is on with us right now. And I'm going to tell you, I wasn't even thinking. Bobby and Mark Stoops both played for Hayden Fry. They're also part of the Bill Snyder.
So did their
great
brother
coaches.
Mike.
Yeah,
who's
Mike.
the former Arizona coach. They all 3 played for Iowa.
And they've also got a blood tie to one of the greatest coaches ever, Bill Snyder. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
I would crawl 10 miles to interview that guy and get him on the show. I think he's one of the greatest football minds ever. Speaking of loud Gothic stadiums, Manhattan, Kansas, Purple Pride. Good God Almighty. But give me your recommendation before we go on a new song people can start playing when it's third down because they've worn Hell's Bells out. I love AC/DC. Nothing against Angus Young and the boys, but, something.
So this is in honor of Grit and Grind in Memphis. I know at our place we've tried this. We're playing we've been playing on third down, whoop that trick a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And the crowd's really gotten into it,
Love it.
We get going, and all of a sudden, right before the play starts, we cut the music, but everybody's whooping that trick right before third down play,
Yeah. Well, with the Grizzlies games, when it's late in the game and it's a close, which NBA games really start in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I love at the FedEx Forum when they get on the big loudspeakers and the video screen there in the middle of the court. They have that, and then they have King Leonidas from the movie 300 and the Spartans. Now we will fight. I mean, it's awesome. And then when the Grizz goes up there and just gets the crowd. I mean, you got it. But so we're thinking about whoop that trick. Okay. Hey, great show today, man. All of our guests. Thank you. We have the greatest listeners, viewers in the world, greatest sponsors. We're going to be growing this thing more and more. We're working with some really smart people behind the scenes to deliver the best product. We do it 6 days a week, over 300 times a year. Matt Dean, awesome. Catch him over at Rhodes College. One of the prettiest, my dad says, prettiest campus in any city in America. It's absolutely gorgeous. Have their own rock quarry in Arkansas. I love that. It's a cool story. And let me say this too. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Do yourself a favor. Go out and do kind deeds. Say kind words to people. You never know how much you can change somebody's life. And read the Constitution. Freedom of speech. That's what we thrive ourselves on. We'll be back tomorrow. Got a great show. Until then, go out, make it happen. And remember, Ken Ramey and the interns, they are for real. We're going to have wrestling trivia soon. And I'm going to have Matt on here with David Aquadro, the milkman. We're going to get into a lot of fun stuff. And those of you that are looking for info on the lines, we're going to talk to them tomorrow. We're really going to get into breaking down these point spreads on Saturday when Mr. LSU Tiger Frank Duffy's with us. Until then, have a great day. We are out of here.